Let's explain a few more details of what we're working on with this basic project, and then I'll look at a handwritten example that could be similar. We're doing a couple of things here at the bottom here for the form. So you can see that we're doing things with our controls. Now we need to manipulate our form. Now, what we do with the auto scale base size, this is when we resize the form, we can get or set this property here. This is going to be when you stretch the form, when you resize it. And you're setting the increments, the size of the changes when you do that auto scale, when it redraws the screen for you. Alright, then we deal with our client size, and this is the client area of the form outside of the menus and the surrounding border, for example, and then you can define that. You would normally do it visually, but you can define that as you need to. And again, when you make changes here, you have to be careful about what you're changing. That's something you can change. We're putting all of our controls into a control collection, and this is going to be where the controls are contained within our form. The form is really a container for holding all of those controls there, and then we just have to add them. It's a collection. We just have to add each of them to the collection there. Then we specify the name of our form and the text. And then we have this resume layout command here at the bottom. This is saying it's okay to redraw or to resume the drawing of the layout. So instead of just having that off or on and then doing all of these changes here within the initialized component, we do a suspend layout, and that suspends layout events so that you can do whatever changes you want, because you can see it's very linear. Do this, do this, do this, do that, do this, do this, do this. You know, for a computer it's like okay. But for humans, if you had to go through and change each tiny little property, if you wanted to turn on your stereo, for example, and you had to push 100 different buttons to do that, or every time you wanted to put on your light, you had to actually draw a light or create a light and then push the button, well, it would get on your nerves. So you don't have to do that. But the suspend layout's going to suspend anything until you actually set everything up, and then you can resume the layout, and that's going to resume everything, and that's going to be the way to do that. That's going to resume so that the events can fire correctly, and it's going to do that very efficiently by doing that. So what we do is, right after we create those variables, initialize the variables to say what they are, button close, etc., then we suspend. Then we do everything on the controller, the component level, and then we do the form, and then we resume the layout. End of region, end of the stuff that Visual Studio is doing for us behind the scenes. And this is the form designer. So this is the form designer. You make changes, those changes are updated into the file. That file gets updated, and we have to save. So that's how that works. That's a basic application. Let's take a peek at it once again. Makes a little bit more sense now. So you can just resize as you need to. And that's going to be that auto resizing that I was talking about, the base. And if we look at the other example really quickly, this is the handwritten version of that. And as you can see, there are similar things that are happening. We have two private controls, a button and a text box. And we're doing a equals new button there, all right there on one line, not on multiple lines or not within the constructor. We're doing it there instead. So it works just like a regular class, except we're dealing with buttons. And these are our objects. No big deal. If you think in terms of everything we've learned about classes and how to handle the public and private access modifiers and dealing with events and dealing with all the different things that we have been talking about, now you see it makes a lot of sense when we come through and actually create a Windows program here, a Windows form. We could actually just do it by hand if we wanted to. If we laid everything out and decided exactly where we wanted to place everything, to a degree, you could always do it visually as well after you set everything up, because the Visual Studio version isn't so off from the actual handwriting version, except the form designer code isn't updated, and you can run into problems with that. So a handwritten file isn't necessarily meant for that form designer. But we're doing this without a resource file as well, so you want to take that into consideration. But you can see as we move down, we set up the form. We do that minimum size. This is going to set the minimum size for our client, plus the height of the title bar, of course. That's where we pull in that systeminformation.caption height so we can get that size for the minimum. You can't resize this any smaller than the minimum. And then we have our client size. So we do everything kind of willy-nilly all over the place in this one. Not a big deal. It doesn't matter the order really. We create our event handlers after we work with our buttons. We do our text boxes as you wish. And then at the end of that constructor, there's no initialized components. It's just a method anyway, not a big deal. You can create that yourself, and in fact you should. You should have a method somewhere that's going to set that up nicely instead of dumping everything into the constructor. That way you can find out what is vitally important to the constructor. Then we do our adds. So we don't do the suspend layout and the resume layout. We could add that if we wanted to. And then the dispose, we do that familiar message box show. And then the disposed. The message box.show is just your normal, without the title present, we're just putting something in the body. And then we have our event handler, which is also doing a message box.show. So in the Windows by hand, we have handwritten. We can do the build. And then we execute. And here it is, just a simple thing. We have a click me, same stuff, titles there, letting us know what the text is, disposing, and we're all done.